What actually is internal validation? And what is external validation? What's really going on here? And how much does it actually influence your life? Why do you look for external validation? Why can't you validate yourself? Why can't you just assert yourself into the world and act upon the things that fit well with your values, your psychology, your own mind, your emotions, your being, your authentic self, your instincts, your intuitions? Why can't you do any of that without looking for some kind of external validation? In this video, I want to give you some more clarity on the differences between internal and external validation and how to start validating yourself and noticing some of the underlying reasons as to why you begin to look for external validation and kind of cling to it. So a big reason as to why we look for external validation is actually fear. We're looking for, let's say, little smiles or laughs or forms of body language that signal validation. Of course, more direct things like saying that someone approves of us or something more linguistic. And we're doing it out of fear. If you ever heard of our tribal ancestors, right, way back in the day, if they were rejected, that typically meant death. Because if they were rejected by the tribe, that meant potentially getting kicked out. That meant being in the wild by themselves, which typically just meant death. So they kind of passed down a lot of those fears to us. But in our modern context, we don't live in tribes. We're not going to get kicked off the planet by all 8 billion humans on planet Earth. You're safe to just experience rejection. You're safe to assert yourself, and not everyone's always going to approve or validate it, and you're safe to just still do it anyways. You're safe to just fully embody yourself, whether it gets you approval or whether it doesn't get you approval. You're safe to really actually be grounded in yourself regardless of the reaction that it actually causes in people around you. This doesn't mean that you intentionally harm people or provoke people or be an asshole of any kind, but this means that that thing, that opportunity that you really want to do, that decision that just you actually have to be doing it, some part of you just simply knows, I have to do this. It's learning to act on these things without needing to gaslight yourself, doubt yourself, be afraid of it. This is a core part of just authentic expression. Learning to express yourself openly, freely, and authentically without always needing validation, without always needing someone to give you a little pat on the back and a stamp of approval. And it feels pretty damn good to actually do that. Because what's the alternative? You have to always sacrifice yourself for the opinions of others, to agree and get along all the time. There's nothing wrong with agreeableness or harmony in a connection, but it becomes problematic when you can't set boundaries, when you can't assert yourself, when you can't act upon the things that you actually want to act upon, when you're doing things habitually that are actually sickening to you because they don't fit you. Now we have a problem. You're doing this stuff out of external validation. You're going to jobs you don't like. You're doing things in your relationship that you don't really want to be doing. You're essentially doing things in your life that just simply don't fit you out of fear. And you lack the ability to start asserting yourself into life in order to really get the things that you actually want, to start moving in the direction that actually aligns with you. So there's a massive problem with external validation in the sense that it highly discourages your own authentic expression. Because we're kind of sacrificing that habitually for this sort of harmony amongst all of us, this sort of harmony in our connections, this sort of harmony amongst other people. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. It feels absolutely fantastic. But again, sometimes you got to know just how to assert yourself and really create the thing that you want to create. Do the thing that you really want to do. Again, this doesn't mean that you're harming anyone in any way or intentionally provoking anyone or anything like that. You can still be open to people and sensitive to their emotional experience in their own mind and all that stuff. And I would really highly recommend that. But this is just a deeper sense of groundedness in yourself. That regardless of how people will react, I'm going to stay in alignment with myself. Again, this really doesn't mean harming anyone. I want you to really understand that. So external validation begins to create this sort of dependency on others' opinions, and it's done out of anxiety and insecurity. And this begins to turn off a lot of your own internal guidance mechanisms as you begin to habitually do this, because then your life is not directed by your own internal guidance, it's directed by the things in your environment. Strictly by the things in your environment. Right? Being directed by the things in your environment, again, isn't bad. We have to ask the question of what is our environment? Did we consciously create our environment? Being controlled by things in your environment can be good, and our environment is always going to have impacts on us. But when it comes to beginning to build your life and really live authentically with yourself, a core element of that is being able to shut off the world around you and actually start to listen to your body. Start to listen to your sensations, emotions, feelings, instincts, impulses, values. A core part of this is getting clear about all that stuff so you're not confused. I think a good example of really beginning to build a lot of that stuff is meditation, because kind of meditation involves shutting out the world and tuning into the self. And from that place, a lot of our own internal guidance mechanisms begin to pop back up, kind of like when we were a kid and we didn't really need anyone's approval on whether or not we wanted to act upon our curiosity. Right? When we were curious, we just went and investigated what we were curious about. Went and investigated the tree or the swing set. When a dog wants to eat or when it barks, it doesn't need someone's approval. When a dog wants to run around and be playful, it doesn't need someone's approval. It just expresses freely. It trusts its own expression regardless of anything that's happening. And it's learning to just like reconnect with that. And just trust in the expression that naturally wants to come through in the moment without always kind of tensing and rigidly holding ourselves and essentially just tensing up the body and repressing ourselves so much. So internal validation really empowers growth in a way that almost nothing else does. Because it actually allows you to make decisions that are aligned with your values. It fosters resilience by reducing a lot of the emotional highs and lows that are caused by external feedback. There's like a stability inside you that starts to really build. It genuinely starts to become unshakable. So I want to give you some more practical steps to cultivate this sort of internal validation. A core part is really discovering your core values. Do you really know what your core values are? Spend like a good month contemplating your core values. How much, on a scale from 1 to 10, do you act in alignment with each value? What do they really mean to you? What do these values actually mean to you? Write down some synonyms. Write down some examples of them. Write down some definitions of them. Don't just write down the value. Like really, like what does this value even mean to me? What does it mean to value relationships or health or consciousness or personal growth? What even is that? What does that mean to me? What are some examples of this? How can I even be doing this in my life every single day? Regardless of what anyone thinks. How can I actually live in alignment with my core values regardless of whether or not people approve or disapprove? Because they're your values. They're things in your own internal guidance system that have to start being acted upon, or else you're always going to feel inauthentic. And it's a sickening experience to be trapped in. Another core part is actually just spending time to meditate. Cutting out the distractions of the external world, structuring in some time every single day to just meditate. to tune back into yourself, to not always be distracted by YouTube, my videos. Get off my videos. Go meditate. Instead, go figure out your values. Go read some books. Essentially just tuning right back into yourself. Another core element is the development of self-compassion over time. Learning to actually just apply compassion to your own pain, to your own confusion, to your own struggles. This begins to get quite pleasurable and allows your internal experience to be less rigid, to be less uncomfortable. It starts to get quite pleasant when you can actually just genuinely and authentically be loving and compassionate towards yourself. Not in a forced way, but it's like your genuine impulse, because that's how you've actually wired your mind to be. So when it comes to actually learning to validate yourself, I want you to view this as a practice, as a skill to develop. I want you to pay attention to when you're looking for external validation, when in actuality in some of these experiences you should be looking to internally validate. Again, this doesn't mean that you harm anyone, you're an asshole. This doesn't mean that you don't take feedback. This doesn't mean that you don't ask people for questions. This doesn't mean you don't ask for help. This doesn't mean that you don't help people to put you into a more reflective state. What this actually means is that in those core moments where you have to actually just express yourself, set the boundary, do the thing that you really want to be doing, you're not always kind of gaslighting yourself and keeping yourself stuck because of that. That's it for this video. If you're interested in working with me, you can apply to do so. Link is in the pinned comment. Take it easy.